And good evening, everyone. It is time for West Michigan First and 10. I'm John Russell of Greater Muskegon Sports Network, along with my partner in crime, Cal Van Single.
Yeah, great to be here again this week.
CatchMark's own Scott DeCamp.
Yeah, we can say that now.
It's out of the bag, right? Okay, and we're doing. And then our special guest is Andy Roberts of the White Lake Beacon. And welcome aboard, Andy.
Oceana's Herald Journal as well. Yeah, thrilled to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic, double duty there.
Yep.
Why don't we start with you, Andy, and your coverage area, and what keeps you busy?
Sure thing. Well, I was just telling you guys before the show, I basically cover US 31 from Rhes Puffer to the south up to Pentwater in the north, and there's also Hesperia in there as well. That's a little off the path, but that's pretty much the group that I take care of, and the rest of them I'm just glomming off you guys.
I don't think so. Well, let's start in OK Green as we normally do, and some interesting games over there. A little bit of scare factor for some big teams. Why don't we start out, Scott, with Muskegon, Zeeland West, 28-20. Muskegon over Zeeland West, and boy, that was kind of dicey for Shane and the Big Reds for a while.
Yeah, that was, I believe Muskegon scored on its first play from scrimmage, and then it was 6-6 for the longest time, and then Zeeland West went up 14-6. But then Muskegon, basically the way that, talking to Shane, I wasn't at that game, I was at the Shores Union game, but talking to Shane afterwards, he said that it was the defense kept them in it long enough until the offense kind of got untracked, and they got it rolling in the fourth quarter, scored 3 touchdowns, and put it away there, and ended up being tighter. They were up 28-14, I believe it was, or 28-12, one of those, and Zeeland scored, I think, late to make it a little closer. But yeah, that's a nice win because Zeeland West, obviously well coached with John Shillitoe, the former Orchard View coach, East Kentwood, et cetera. And Muskegon coming off that 49-14 loss to Cass Tech, which in turn turned around and lost to King the next week. So that was, but those are really good teams. King, sure. Cass Tech, Muskegon's a good team, obviously, too.
Sure, exactly. And Cal, you and I were talking about, Shane's propensity for winning against John Shillitoe, and didn't know if that was going to happen or not.
I think we all got a little bit worried there for a little bit, and you were correct. That's the first note I have here in my notes is Shane Fairfield's never lost to a Wing C team, never lost to John Shillitoe. And not many coaches can say that. John Shillitoe's an incredible coach, and he wins way more than what he loses. So Shane Fairfield and his staff really have that Wing C figured out here so far. And quickly more about Muskegon. Their youth continues just to get better. They have 6 sophomores and a freshman in that starting lineup. They have another test this Friday with Union. But they also get Dwayne Anderson back next week. They're starting left tackle for the last 2 years. He's been out with a knee injury, so he'll be back, and that will really help them to shore up that offensive line.
Yeah, and Andy, your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, and you mentioned the lineman coming back. That's only going to help Jacob Price, who's off to a great start, a couple of big games already this year. And you're used to Muskegon kind of being that veteran team, but like you guys mentioned, they're a very young group, and Price only a sophomore. I think they're probably going to be one of those teams that peaks very late in the season, which is going to be a good thing for them.
And the Big Reds will play Union. Now, this isn't your grandfather's Union team. Don Fellows has come in, and boy, they gave Mona Shores everything they wanted for one half last week. And your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that's I think the way that if Shane has his Big Reds watching the first half of that Union Shores game, that should get their attention because Union was up 26-14 with under a minute left and moving the ball up and down the field. Tommy Stevens, their junior quarterback for Union, he's an electric player. In fact, Don Fellows coached at Grandpa's Christian. He coached Drake Harris, who played at U of M. And he says, next to Drake Harris, Tommy Stevens is the most electric player I've coached. Small, he's like 5'8", 170, but really slippery back there as a quarterback. And we'll get to that. But Muskegon, they're at home again, and they'll be ready for Union. There's not much doubt about that, but it's not the pushover, like you said. They're not the pushover of years past.
Right, exactly. How about you, Cal?
Sticking with Shores here?
No, we're doing Muskegon.
Gotcha.
Union.
On this one, on this coming week?
Yeah.
I think that definitely. I think Muskegon's going to just continue to get better, but they got woke up a little bit when they started seeing that score, that Union and Shore score.
How about you, Andy?
Oh, and obviously Muskegon will win this game if they show up, but got to give it up for Union, right? I mean, they haven't won in this series since '97, but it was only 2 years ago Union literally didn't have a healthy team enough. They had to forfeit out of a Rhes Puffer game, and then 2 years later they're leading the defending state champs at halftime. Just a real credit to what Coach Fellows is doing down there in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, he's really brought him back and some excitement for Union. But I agree with all of you, Big Reds over Union, and I'll tell you, especially with the fact that I'm sure it wasn't as clean a game as Shane wanted against Zeeland West. So they certainly aren't going to take anything for granted. So I really kind of look for the Big Reds to roll in this one. And that brings us, Scott, to Mona Shores and Union. You talked about that a little bit. You were actually there, so you got a chance to cover that one.
Yep, that was my last game, actually covering for M Live. But it was, I just kind of wanted to see both teams. They're both good stories. Obviously, Shores, back-to-back state titles, and then Union, 2-0 for the first time since, I want to say, '98 or something like that. But, that was great. It was back and forth the whole first half, and Shores scored with no time on the clock at the half. Touchdown pass from Mark Konechny to Ryan McNiff, and that 15-yard touchdown pass that pulled Shores within 26-21, but it totally changed the momentum of the game too. Mm-hmm. Like it was, I think Union went into the locker room frustrated and maybe a little dejected because they had to lead the whole time, and they were still up top, but Shores was feeling a lot better. And then the second half, Shores opened it up, and Dimitri Roberson just had a monster game, in the return game. He had a 90-yard kickoff return in the second quarter, and then had a 51-yard punt return in the third. And he's got that speed. He's just like his brothers. Right. Damari and Derice. They both very talented players as well. And they basically got some good balance. They had Demir Farnham finished with 132 yards on 7 carries with 2 touchdowns, and Konechny ran for 100+ from the quarterback spot. And Brandon Bankard, he ran for a couple second-half touchdowns, so it was nice to see him get an opportunity. And then on defense, Jeff Lenardowitz led him with 10 tackles. So they really kind of got it rolling in the second half and have some momentum now going into this game this week.
Cal, your thoughts on the Shores and Union game?
Yeah, a lot with what Scott said. Challenged early, great response in the second half. Another tough test this week. We'll talk about in a minute. Really, kudos here to Shores. No one does military night better than Shores. If you ever got a chance to go to there and see that, you and I have done it in the past, and Mona Shores just does an exceptional job with military night, which is coming up this Friday. So definitely something to take in on a Friday night.
Andy?
This will be a good matchup. Like you guys talked about, the Ducks hung with Muskegon last week. Shores maybe got caught looking ahead. You never know with high school kids, but this looks like a good one. And I don't want to go out on a limb and predict an upset so much, but I wouldn't be stunned if Zeeland West comes away with the victory in this matchup.
Okay. How about you, Scott? Zeeland West and Mona Shores. How do you see this one?
Well, I don't like to give away my picks before I actually publish them, but I mean, I agree with Andy. It's obviously Shores has got to be ready, and I think they will. But there's a lot going on with the Sailor Salute, and like Cal said, that's such a great thing that they do, and it's just a spectacle. It's honoring the first responders, active military, veterans, everybody, and they have a flyover, and it's just really something to see, and they wear the special uniforms and everything. Right. So it's a really neat thing. And as far as the game, Mona Shores and Zeeland West, I think it's a good matchup as well of differing styles, but 2 very well coached teams. And it's Shores home opener. They've been on the road the first 3 games, right, and against a tough, pretty challenging schedule. So I'm sure they're ready to get home.
Okay. And Cal, your thoughts?
Close game, almost too close to call. Who's going to win this one? John Shillito doesn't lose too many games back to back, and that if it says Muskegon in front of it, Muskegon, Mona Shores are the Big Reds. He kind of wants a little piece of that action also. So I really think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to come right down to the last few minutes. Okay. If I had to call it, I'm going to go Shores because me, right. I was defer the champion and they're the champ. So Shores in a close one.
And I'll agree on Shores because for what Scott had said, and you as well, a military night, it's their first home game. They're going to be stoked. Not going to be an easy game, but it should be definitely a good one. Shillito and Koziak should bring down the house. Let's move. We'll start with Andy on this one, since Rhes Puffer is one of the teams that you cover. Rhes Puffer, off to a pretty decent start, all things considered, with Coach Bird and the group, 48-12 over Wyoming.
Yeah, it was a game Rhes Puffer was in control of pretty much throughout. I think they scored in each of the first 2 or 3 drives, and they would have had more points. They had a couple drives derailed by penalties, and that's something Coach Bird said they definitely need to clean up. But, Brody Johnson's just off to a tremendous start. He had 270-some-odd yards against Wyoming. I think he had a 200-yard game the week before as well. And of course, it's pretty easy to run, I guess, when you got Marco Fields to run behind. But that's a side of the line that Rhes Puffer is very strong at, and I think they're definitely looking a lot better as the season progresses.
Okay, how about you, Scott?
Yeah, that's a good bounce back after the season opening loss. They lost 16-8 to Grand Haven, and it was a hard fought game. I covered that one. It didn't feel like they were. It didn't feel like the game was really that close, although they battled the whole time and had chances, but just every time maybe they try to mount a rally, it'd be derailed by penalties or a turnover or whatever. And so they hung tough in that one, but it was, for them, that's good to see them bounce back in the last 2 and then kind of leading us into this week. Zeeland East, they're at Zeeland East, and, that's always tough when you play Zeeland East, but they have a new coach, and they had one handed to them pretty good by Spring Lake last week, and I really do think Rhes Puffer has a good shot this week, and to go on 3-1, which that'd be a great start for them.
Okay, your thoughts, Cal?
Yeah, I really would like to see this Brody Johnson, 5'10", 200 pounds. Sounds like almost a human bowling ball out there.
I tell you, I was telling the AD, Cliff Sandy, out there, in the first half, no one could tackle him because he kept breaking all the tackles. In the second half, no one could catch him because he was outrunning everybody. It's not fair that he's got all that skill.
I think Matt Bird needs a signature win this year. This is his 3rd year. If he could, trip somebody up, get a signature win, a big win. I think that would even do more excitement for that school. Grand Haven, of course. I'm sorry, Rhes Puffer. If they could move to 3-1, then with that, I think that'd be really good for the Rocket Land over there.
Sure. Your thoughts on the Zeeland East game?
This can be real tough, especially on Rhes Puffer's defense. We haven't mentioned them yet in the talk of Brody Johnson and Marco Fields, but Zeeland East went for 641 yards last week against Holland. They scored 68 points. 6 different guys scored touchdowns. They can come at you from all angles. It's going to be real hard for Rhes Puffer to stop them. I think if they can get a few key stops, that's going to be huge. But I think in the end, if I had to make a pick, I'd probably pick Zeeland East.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually say Rhes Puffer because of the fact that I think that I'm looking at the schedule, Zeeland East. I'm going to say it's not necessarily the toughest schedule, so I'm going to go maybe a little strength of schedule and hope that Rhes Puffer can get the job done. Before we leave Puffer, I'd like to get your thoughts, since you're a bit closer to them a little bit, Andy, on Coach Bird. I've had an opportunity to talk to him, not this year, but in the past when he first came over there, and it seems like the excitement is back. The numbers are back. I mean, they didn't have a JV team not so long ago, and it seems like they're heading they're trending in the right direction, as they say.
No, you could tell that from I think his first year, that they had a whole bunch of seniors who had never played football before that came out to join the team, and that really speaks to the like you said, the enthusiasm is really building there, and now they have all 3 levels going, and I don't know how long it's going to take, and I know Coach Bird has said a couple times that he has to remind himself that he needs to be patient in building the program, but I think he's well on his way to building something nice over there.
We'll move to the OK Blue, and Coopersville beating Fruitport 29-22. Fruitport fell down early, Scott, but really made a battle of it in that game.
They did. It was 22-8 after the first quarter, and just kind of chipped away at it from there, and just came up a little short there, but battled. That was although they've lost the last 2 games, they battled tough against teams that are off to good teams. They lost to Cadillac last week and lost to Coopersville, which is now 3-0 for the first time in a while.
Right.
For them. But in that game, Pascal Joman, I believe he's a sophomore, ran for 93 yards on 10 carries. He had a 66-yard touchdown run, and Aiden Vela had 7 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. And then Cody Nash led the defense with 9 tackles. So it was a good performance. But this is the one this week that they're going to be really pointing to.
Battle of the Bayou, right?
That's right.
Fruitport and Spring Lake. Cal, Coopersville and Fruitport, first of all.
Coopersville and Fruitport, I had a buddy who went to the Coopersville game, came away surprised at how good they were. but I want to see them get tested. I want to see them have to play somebody really good, and then I think at that point, let's see just how good they are. I don't think their schedule's been real strong yet so far. But he said they have some really nice players. I know they have somebody, I can't remember the name. Maybe Scott remembers. They got somebody collegiate bound, maybe a division like a MAC or Lilac or something. So they have a couple of athletes there to do something.
I'm not sure what his name is. I know that they do have a young man on the team, the son of Mike Anthony. I don't know if you remember Mike Anthony that played for Ravenna in '94 with Charlie Knapp and all those guys. Well, his son is, I believe, a junior now on Coopersville's team, and so it just shows you how quickly time flies and how old we're getting. But that's they're off to a good start. But I agree with Cal. Let's see once that schedule stiffens a little bit.
How about you, Andy, with the weighing in on Coopersville and Fruitport?
Absolutely. Well, Scott kind of took my thunder over there with Pascal Jolman. That's obviously the big name from last week's game, and the juices are going to be flowing for that one. Spring Lake, like you said, they're off to a great start. They've blown out Zeeland East. They've blown out Holland Christian. They're coming in on a high, and Fruitport's probably thinking they can take them. So, that's one where I'm not going to be there, but I wish I could because that's going to be a fun one.
Okay, so we did talk about Spring Lake a little bit. They are having a whale of a year. Don't know if that expectations were high going in. You're a little bit maybe closer to that. Is it kind of what they expected where they're at right now?
Yeah, it was. And they didn't have a season opening game. They're supposed to play Orchard View.
Right.
And Orchard View, opted not to have a varsity team because of numbers and all those kinds of things. And so Spring Lake didn't play week 1, so they were itching to get out there in week 2, and they just put one on Zeeland East, and then again put one on Holland Christian, although it was only 26-12 at the half.
Right.
Then they outscored them 21-0 in the third quarter to put it away. But, Christian Folkert, senior running back, he also plays linebacker, but he had another big game for them, 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. The week before he had, I think, over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he's off to a tremendous start. They've just got a lot of seniors, a lot of guys who can make plays. And, I think this is their game to lose, honestly, going over to Fruitport. But as they say, it's that rivalry. You just never know who's going to rise, and funny things happen in those rivalry games.
Yeah. And Fruitport has, they beat Kennewill Hills, and I realize that Kennewill Hills has been struggling, but a tough loss to Cadillac and then Coopersville. Fruitport's got some weapons, so maybe they can make that an interesting game.
Yep, I think so.
Your thoughts, Cal?
And I spoke with Darren Garrity, who's the former head coach at Grant, who's the offensive coordinator now at Zeeland East, and I said, in a nutshell, tell me about Spring Lake. Why are they so good? Why are they just jumping on everybody all of a sudden? Because we haven't seen them yet.
Right.
And he said, simple. They're big, they're strong, they're fast, and most of all, they're disciplined, and they have 23 seniors on that team. So you incorporate all that. Sounds like the Lakers are for real.
Sure, exactly. Andy, your thoughts?
Well, like Scott mentioned, Folkert, and you don't run for 200-plus yards and 4 touchdowns back-to-back weeks without having those big disciplined linemen up front. So I think that's really bodes well for Spring Lake.
Throw it to you, Scott, for Grand Haven. Your thoughts last week and this week?
I thought they could battle. I really thought they could give Jenison a game. They played them tough last year. They pulled this one out 28-26 against Jenison at home. To move them to 2-1. The nice thing for Grand Haven was that they bounced back from a 33-7 loss to Traverse City West up in Traverse City, and so I think people, including myself, are wondering, okay, what are we going to get out of Grand Haven this week? I picked them to lose, I think, but picked a competitive game, and they pulled it out. They had it was 28-20. They were leading late, last minute or so, and Jenison goes down and scores and goes for 2 to try to tie it, and they stopped them on the run. Grand Haven didn't, and they held on for the rest of the way. But in that game, it was Ryan Francis, the senior running back for them. He finished with 123 yards on 16 carries. He busted a 35-yard touchdown to put them up 28-20. And then Nate Benke, first time ever playing football. He's like 6'3", 225, something like that. He always played soccer in the past. Right. Big body, but always played soccer, and he's their tight end, defensive end, and kicker. He was 4 for 4 on PATs, and all of those points were huge in that game. And then he had a 17-yard touchdown reception, which was his first ever touchdown playing football. So, those are kind of the sparks. And then Bashir Neely, very great basketball player for Grand Haven. He plays in the secondary for them, and he had 6 solos, 3 assists, including a tackle for loss. So they had some different guys stepping up in that game for them.
Cal?
Well, I'd like to see the Buccaneers make a big kind of really get something going there. They have beautiful facilities. That stadium's spectacular. The weight room's beautiful. I'd really like to see them at some point here kind of get rolling, see if they can't build something, and I think they're overdue to do something myself.
And Andy, of course, what was it, last year or 2 years ago? I'm not sure. Didn't even have a JV team. A school that size not having that. Kind of hard to believe, I guess, right?
Yeah, and they've really built it up, kind of like Coach Bird at Rhes Puffer. And Scott mentioned Francis, but the whole team was running wild on the ground. They had 284 yards rushing in that game against Jenison. So, and they're looking pretty good heading into this matchup against our old friend Pat Collins and the West Ottawa Panthers.
Let's move over to the West Michigan Conference in the game that we broadcast last week. It was Whitehall taking it to Ravenna by the score of 42-0. Not necessarily surprised that Whitehall won that game, Scott, but a bit surprised at the point spread.
I would fully agree with that in my predictions last week. I picked a tight game. I thought Whitehall would still win. But my whole question with them, it wasn't from a physical thing. It was how would they bounce back from that Oak Ridge loss? How healthy were they? And I think they answered that in a big way. And, in that game, the outgained Ravenna 391 to 157. Ravenna had 4 turnovers, Whitehall none. And they had balance, too. Whitehall did. You had Alec Pruitt with another great game. He's had a really strong season. 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kyle Stratton, the sophomore quarterback, was 6 of 9, 92 yards, 3 touchdowns. All to Brody Fogus, great target. And then Stratton also rushed for almost 90 yards. And they really balanced. I know the rushing yards were a lot more than the passing, but when you can do a little bit of both and keep teams honest, that's the whole key. So they look great. And Ravenna, on the Ravenna side, they just need to kind of move on. They still 2-1 start. They have Mason County Central come in, and we'll get to that in a minute. But, I think Whitehall back on track, and they go up to Shelby this week.
Exactly. Cal?
Better performance this past Friday, that's for sure. The young quarterback looked really great. I thought they used their size to an advantage. Impressed with Jackson Cook. He just had to make 2 big plays on special teams. Also, I think forced a fumble, had an interception. He really had a great night. Gabe Reevy is a beast. Oh, my gosh. Stratton and Fogus, like Scott said, they just had a great evening, great defense. And I think, that, looking ahead here, 6 weeks or so, they may have to win to get to the playoffs. I mean, that Division 4 is going to be loaded with great teams. So if they can get past that Oak Ridge loss, mentally, and then just get rolling, I think they'll be okay. But that Oak Ridge loss, I think for them mentally was tough.
Yeah, exactly. Andy, your thoughts on the Whitehall Ravenna game?
Yeah, that Cal mentioned the Oak Ridge game. I was at that one, as you guys were too, and they really kind of let that one get away with some key miscues. But impressed with the way they bounced back against Ravenna. And you look at their roster; they just have talent everywhere. I mean, we talk about Brody, we talk about Nate Boley, who makes plays. We talk about Alec Pruitt, who Whitehall just grabs a middleweight wrestler every year, sticks him a running back, and they're good for 700 yards every season, it seems like. But yeah, they got all the tools they need to make a deep run, and I think the more Kyle Stratton improves, and he is improving, that team is really going to take off.
One thing, the loss of Ira Jenkins, the Nordic Nightmare, and Grayson Shepard, those are big losses for them. Those two they're just great athletes and great football players. That's a couple of big losses for that team also.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're talking 2 like all-state caliber players that are off in that team. And, certainly Coach Tony Sigmund's not making excuses, but it is what it is, as they say. I mean, those are some significant losses, and they got to replace those guys. Yeah,
and if you want to really look further ahead, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I can totally see a Whitehall Spring Lake matchup coming up in the playoffs, both Division 4. I think Spring Lake is the largest Division 4 school in the state.
Right.
So that was a game that maybe we thought might happen last year, but I could really see that happening this year if we're looking at playoff matchups.
Yeah, and as Cal and Andy both mentioned, Kyle Stratton, I felt that he might have come of age in that Ravenna game. I mean, you saw, he's a young guy, just a sophomore, but certainly had the confidence. I guess he doesn't lack for confidence anyhow. You probably know that better than anybody,
sure.
Andy, being close to Whitehall. But boy, you could just see him commanding that game, and it was really, I think that might be, as you look back on his career, maybe kind of the kickstart that really he felt that he was in control.
And what impresses me about Kyle is, he's got some work to do in terms of throwing from the pocket, but he is fantastic when he's rolling out of the pocket. He's on the move making plays, and that's just something you cannot cannot coach or teach. It's just raw talent, and he's got that. And as the more he gets coached up and the more he works on that throwing from the pocket, he's just going to be really dangerous.
Exactly. And they play Shelby, of course, this week. We kind of teased Ravenna a little bit. Didn't know myself if they were going to have a game with Mason County's history a little bit, but you got the skinny on that, Scott.
Yeah, Mason County Central, kind of later this summer, I would say, they decided to go with a hybrid schedule. They weren't going to play Montague, Whitehall, or Oak Ridge. And so, Ravenna was still going to be on the schedule, but originally they had Manistee on the schedule as well as Hart. They couldn't play those first 2 games because of COVID, because the impact that from COVID, the effects that they had on that. And so this will actually be Mason County Central's first game, and they're playing it at 6:30 Thursday at Ravenna.
Interesting.
They're doing that because of officiating it. They weren't able to maybe secure officials for Friday, so they had a crew lined up for like a Thursday JV game that might have happened, but that's not happening, so that officiating crew is taking a varsity game at Ravenna on Thursday.
Okay.
I was wondering what that was, why they were playing Thursday. That makes sense now.
Exactly. Let's take Montague last week. They beat Joe Tannis's Hart team, kind of burst the bubble a little bit. And Joe's done a great job over there, and Hart, believing in themselves, but ran into a bit of a reality check, I guess you could say, with kind of the perfect storm for Montague, kind of finding themselves a little bit.
Yeah, identical score to Montague's Week 2 win over at North Muskegon, 35-0. And I mean, without seeing either of those games, it's hard to say exactly how they went, but obviously they got the running game going and the defense stood tall again. And, Dylan Everett, another big game for him, the senior. I think we expected him to have that kind of success. Obviously, we mentioned it last week that he didn't against Edwardsburg, but that's a different animal than what you're facing now in the league. And, he finished with 147 yards on 17 carries with 4 touchdowns last week. He put up 175 yards. And Tug Nichols had a really big game receiving, too. He had 116 yards on 7 catches. And then John Griner led him defensively with 6 tackles. So they outgained Hart 422 to 102. So they basically controlled that game.
Your thoughts, Cal, on that one?
Yeah, they got great skilled players. Wow, they have great skilled players. I think Everett's got 8 touchdowns in the last 2 games. I think you just hit on that. You had 4 the other night, and I think 4 the night before, or the Friday before. Cooey, Tugg, Peterson, McDonald on that offensive line, great, and also defensive line, great players. So, and here's a kicker. You're looking, and I'm just going to jump ahead, but just for myself here while I have the note in front of me. Since 2010, this Oak Ridge Montague, they're both 5-5. So that's kind of and I got a few more notes on Oak Ridge when we get to it, but I was thinking about that. What's that record since 2010? Yeah, and it's 5-5 here. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Some dandies in that too. Like 18 and 19 were just fantastic games.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that Montague's defense really is going to get challenged again on Friday night. I think if they win this game, that defense is going to have to win it for them.
Your thoughts?
I completely agree with Cal. The defense is going to be so big. Hayden McDonald up front and the guys in the secondary really need to slow down Oak Ridge, who really ground down Whitehall 2 weeks ago. I think Montague needs to try and make sure that doesn't happen. But on the opposite side, I think they're still trying to find themselves a little bit offensively. So much, even though Coach Dennett has sort of been on record that they're just trying to keep things more or less on course after the departure of Pat Collins and so many players. They still had to change things up with Cooey at quarterback and work around his skill set. But that's where Dylan Everett comes in, because he's been such a bell cow in a way that he wasn't before. And I think they're starting to hit their stride and we're just in time for a big time matchup.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Dennett, and I know we all have to a certain extent, but Andy, I'll kind of direct this to you. One thing I said, boy, what was it like playing Edwardsburg? Obviously you knew they were going to be tough, but Montague was in a situation that they have not been in a long time. I mean, out of a game basically. And I said, what do you tell the kids after that one? He says, hey, we move on to the next one, get that one behind us, move on. And they certainly seem to have been able to do that.
And at the end of that game, Tug Nichols, who was knocked out of that game with an injury, gathered the guys together and really delivered an emotional speech. I wasn't close enough to really hear what he was saying, but he was really imploring the team to really come together. And that was the message that Coach Dennett said as well. And it certainly seems to have taken hold, because they've been fantastic the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, good insight.
Your thought on the big matchup? That's a game that we're going to be doing not only on the Greater Muskegon Sports Network, but also our friends here at CatchMark. It'll be Montague and Oak Ridge. What are you thinking in that one, Andy?
And I'm really looking forward to being at that one as well. It's going to be fun. Oak Ridge having the advantage of the week off after Mason County didn't play them last week is probably going to help them. They've got Corey Vanderput, Raymond. They really make things happen in the running game. Like I said, Montague's going to have to try and keep them from grinding it out. My guess is Oak Ridge wins a really close game, but I mean, like you said, like Cal said, these matchups have just been great for the most part the last decade. I don't expect anything different here.
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about who wins this game, Oak Ridge Montague, well, I'm going to do something I have never done before. I'm not going with a champion. I'm going to go with the Eagles.
Okay.
I think just that offensive line, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but offensive line for Oak Ridge is, we've seen them once, and they just overpowered Whitehall.
How about you?
Yeah, that's I think you got to give Oak Ridge the edge in this one. But I mean, like you said, those last 10 years, the matchups have been great. Last year it was lopsided. Montague went to Oak Ridge and won 42-6. That was a really special Montague team, 12-0.
Right.
I mean, no one threatened them really throughout the whole season, with the exception of Whitehall and that double overtime thriller. Really, I mean, Clinton played them tough for a half in the finals, but beyond that, no one really even pushed them at all. So,
exactly.
So yeah, it'll be a big one. I think it's going to be big boy football up in the trenches.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be, as from Montague's standpoint, another Edwardsburg. I think it's going to be a tough one. But, boy, I'll tell you what, I was very impressed with Oak Ridge. You know, we heard so much, and rightfully so, about Corey Vanderput for Oak Ridge. But, man, they come right out. They run 3 or 4 plays with Trevor Jones. They run another 3 or 4 plays in a row with Brendan Raymond. Then they get it to Vanderput. And then on top of it, Danachek throws, about 40, 50 yards in the air. A little bit more. I didn't doubt his athletic ability or his football IQ, obviously being a coach's son. But to see him throw, they could actually be a passing offense if they wanted to be, maybe spread it out a little bit. So they do have a lot of weapons.
They do, and just that size up front on offense. And then, they have a young defense, but, that was a big step they made against Whitehall, because Whitehall's they can hurt you in a lot of different ways. And
sure.
I thought overall, there's a couple busted plays that Whitehall took advantage of a couple weeks ago. But other than that, I thought Oak Ridge did a pretty good job defensively against them too. So, and then, of course, they've had a couple weeks to prepare now for Montague, and then, they're led by the Detroit Lions Coach of the Week last week, Kerry Harger, who's that was a nice and very deserving honor for him. So, I'm really looking forward to this one on Friday.
I asked Kerry if it meant that he and the coaching staff got to coach a Lions game. I was kind of looking forward to that. And he kind of.
I think I think at the end of the season they get to go to a game. Each of the coaches of the year, coaches of the year get to go to a game. But is that really a reward or not? I mean,
especially at the end of the season. I mean, the history shows that's probably not going to be much fun.
Right. And honestly, it is. I'm actually truth be told, I'm on the panel for the Coach of the Week with the Lions, and they really do a great job.
Yeah.
What they do with the coaches, and they give basically the winning coach gets money for the program, and then they have the coaches in at a Lions game and put them up in a suite, and just they do all kinds of nice stuff. It's a great program.
Sure. North Muskegon Norsemen finally got rewarded with a win. They took it to Shelby by the score of 67-0.
Yep. Can I jump in here on Oak
Sure.
Ridge a second?
Go ahead.
Jump back. Really, I just wanted to talk about Oak Ridge real quick. Oak Ridge has got that great offensive line. Lowry at the center, Bean and Shoppy, right? At the guards, and Raymond and Driscoll at the tackles. Plus you throw in Driscoll and Joseph at the tackles. They're so well coached. The trio of running backs that you guys mentioned, they were Jones, Raymond, and Vanderput. Really the team to beat now, in my opinion, here for the rest of the way. They've lost 6 times to the eventual state champion in the playoffs. And I think all 6 were parochial schools.
Okay.
So it's crazy. 2 other things real quick. If you look, I think that school started in 64, I think. So if you look in the 60s, their winning percentage was like 237. In the 70s, it bumped up to 456, but Jack Sugars comes in at the end of the 70s. In the 80s, it goes to 685 win percentage. In the 90s, it climbs to 787. 2000 to 2010, and 2010, I think, would have been Jack's last year. They're at 832 win percentage through that 10 years there. And since Carey's been there, they have an 812 win percentage. So that coach, Carey's just doing such a great job coaching that team. He has a lot of great coaches that coach with him. But because he won that, that Coach of the Year award, I wanted just to give a little plug out there to carry Harger, 8-12 win percentage. And that's, it's just outstanding. And also, 9/11 was last weekend. Jaden Parker, Coach Parker's son, he's at Annapolis at the military, or the Naval Academy. So just a little plug out to Jaden, sophomore at Annapolis Naval Academy. Just a little shout out to him for, it's hard to do to go to West Point in the Naval Academy. Really hard to get into. So a little plug for Jaden there, representing the Eagle family well.
Yeah, great point there, Cal. Thanks for bringing that back. Also, talked with Carrie a little bit. I says, going back to the days where you took over for Jack Sugars. I said, that's not the easiest thing in the world. You're replacing a legend. I said, did you have a little bit of like in the back of your mind, I hope I don't screw this thing up? He said, a little bit. He says, yeah. He says there was a lot of that. But I'll tell you what, 16 years in a row they've been in the playoffs. Carrie has definitely kept the train on the tracks.
Yeah, their model of consistency. I mean, as much or more than any other program in the area, I would say. I mean, obviously, it's hard to top what Muskegon's done, Muskegon Catholic Central, but Oak Ridge is right there in terms of consistency.
Exactly. Let's move to, like I said, North Muskegon finally got one in the win count. Got to feel good for Coach Witham. They beat Shelby 67-0.
Yeah, that's a good one. I figured they get back on track and got everything rolling again, and they had 513 yards of offense, so they got that rolling. 350 on the ground, which is something that they hadn't done in the first two games. They struggled with the running game, but against, albeit tough opponents with Muskegon Catholic Central and Montague. But, they had Nick Dana with 6 carries, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. There were 4 Norsemen that rushed for 50 or more yards. And then freshman quarterback James Young, 6 of 7, 131 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Sam Gallo led the defense with 6.5 tackles. For Shelby, they were led by Cade Clement with 7 tackles, but it's a tough go for Shelby right now. Sounds like the numbers are pretty good, really, but it's just it's totally a rebuilding mode right now for them.
Yeah, exactly. How about you, Andy? You're close up there to Shelby. It wasn't so long ago we were following him up for the. Zoe Rodriguez had him on that stair step, and then it's a smaller school, so you're going to run into the zing and zang or whatever it is. What's your feeling on Shelby's situation?
It's sort of incredible what happened to that program. I think they've won 4 games in the 8 years since they made their last semifinal appearance in 13, which is incredible. But I think they've got the right person in there now. Phil's been just relentlessly positive, and that's what you need when you're in a straits like Shelby is right now. You got to have a guy that talks about, hey, isn't this great? We're out here playing football together instead of worrying about the score too much. It's improving, it's camaraderie and stuff like that. And I think if he doesn't succeed, it's not because he wasn't the right guy, because I think he's the right choice.
Exactly. Cal, your thoughts?
Well, I say this kind of jokingly, but everything you hear, Shelby's got an incredible soccer team. Maybe eliminate soccer and get those guys out on the football team. And I say that jokingly because soccer's a great sport too. But yeah, definitely soccer's hurt that that football program, because there are so many great athletes playing soccer. And that soccer's another game. Has that game of soccer really come on here in the last 10 to 20 years here in Michigan.
Exactly. Let's move to the Lake State. Don't have to spend a whole lot of time because we're only talking about a couple of teams, but we had 2 teams, Muskegon Heights and Muskegon Catholic, win by forfeits last week. So moving on to this week, Muskegon Heights takes on Manistee. How do you see that one, Scott?
Well, that will be easily their toughest test so far. They played obviously 2 games actually on the field. They beat Potterville in the opener, then they beat Calvin Christian at home a couple weeks ago, and Manistee's actually. They kind of took a rough one, I think, in the opener, I think at Godwin Heights, but they bounced back with 2 straight wins, and they put one on Ludington last week, which I was a little surprised. I mean, that's a rivalry game.
Sure.
It's one of the state's oldest rivalries, if not the oldest. But it's right up there, and it was 41-12 Manistee, so I think that should probably get Muskegon Heights' attention going into this week.
Okay. Your thoughts, Cal?
Yeah, just kind of strength of schedule there. I want to see the Heights come out and play somebody really good and see what they can do against really good talent.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, Manistee was trailing early in that one, 12-7, and they just dominated the rest of the way. So they'll definitely be coming and riding a wave of momentum against Heights. And it's hard to make of those schools coming in, because, like you said, we haven't really seen them measure up against teams on their level. So it should be real interesting to see what happens down there Friday.
And I don't think we mentioned this week North Muskegon does take on Hart, so that could be an interesting matchup as well. So
you know what? I think Hart's going to be a team to be reckoned with in the future. That conference realignment. and their superintendent was a coach for Jack Sugars for years at Oak Ridge. I think he probably learned a lot from Jack. I think he's going to be able to, just to help that program just continue to get better and better. So I think Hart's going to be a team on the rise here in the future.
I'd say Hart's already on the rise. I mean, they scored 74 points in the first 2 games, which is, I went back and looked, that's the most points they've scored in 2 consecutive in-season games in a decade. I mean, this is a program that has not had a lot of success, and they got off to a great start this year. I don't think many of us saw that Kent City game coming, and we talked about it earlier. They had a dose of reality against Montague, but not every team they play is going to be a Montague. I assume North Muskegon will probably get them this week too, but I would expect them to play a lot better against North Muskegon than they have in the past.
Yeah, Hearts and Heights have definitely been 2 feel-good stories this year. Muskegon Catholic and Ludington this week.
Yeah, Catholic again coming off that quote bye week. They got the forfeit win. They're itching to get back out there again, especially coming off a loss to Rapids West Catholic, which again, West Catholic is back on the rise again. So that'll be I think just great for Catholic to get back out there and just take the field again. I mean, I expect them to have their way with Ludington, though.
Okay,
I think they're pretty good. Muskegon Catholic, Waller, Elliott, Convertini, and a host of other guys. They could be in for a special year. I think they got to stay healthy throughout the whole year to have that special year.
Okay. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I think as we go here, but it's been. We'll do the final thoughts here as we go down the line. We'll give the new kid on the block the first final thought. And Andy, first of all, thanks for stopping by, Andy. We appreciate it, and it's great getting the perspective of the area that we cross over and cover the same areas, and we run into each other and all that type of stuff, but it's kind of neat to be able to get kind of that northern feel or that 31 corridor feel. Your parting thoughts here.
Right, well, I was joking. I know Scott pretty well by now, but I was hoping I was going to be able to keep from being starstruck with you guys here today. But I hopefully that turned out all right. But I think West Michigan football is just it's in a really good place right now. We got a lot of good teams. Whitehall, Montague, both great. Oak Ridge, obviously, always good. And like we talked about today, Hart, Heights, some teams that haven't been as good lately are on the rise. So it's really good to see some high-level football being played here this year.
Cal.
Yes, I'm gonna echo your same thoughts. We have some good teams here this year.
We do,
and if they can stay healthy, I think some of these teams are gonna make a run in the playoffs. How far they can get, you just never know, because you just don't know how the ball's gonna bounce on that Friday night. And we've seen it a few years ago. Oak Ridge beat North Muskegon 61-6 in the regular season, and North Muskegon got them in the playoffs.
Sure.
So I think teams got to be healthy and happy.
Yeah.
The teams got to come together, bond together. But I think we got some good football clubs in this area again.
And Scott?
I just have to say my parting shot or whatever would be just thank you to everyone at MLive for the opportunities over almost 21 years. So many great colleagues, bosses, and most of all the readers, the coaches, the athletes, just everybody that's been so great. And coming over here to CatchMark, I'm really excited about this opportunity and being able to hopefully still have a good impact on the community, and maintain a lot of those relationships. But I've been blessed just to be around this, and just to kind of wake up every day and say this is your job. You can't ask for anything better than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Because I was almost reading your eulogy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All the people just come out of the woodwork, much like when John left radio, and the hundreds of people that just commented to John and. That calling me and he was crying. He goes, I just can't believe this. And so you got to kind of read your own eulogy ahead of time.
Yeah, it was very touching. It's, I don't know, I can't speak for anyone else, but the reason I got into this or what I wanted all along was just to make an impact on a community. And I think reading those responses, that kind of told me that I think I have, but, I don't want to make it sound like it's an arrogant thing. It's just that, it's really touching when you hear people say those things about you.
Sure, exactly. And I'll tell you what, we're all of us are going to be at the Montague and Oak Ridge game, so we're looking forward to that. We'll be there on behalf of the Greater Muskegon Sports Network, Cal and I, along with our good friends at CatchMark. They've let us tag along there and put our audio with their video. So until they tell us to stop, we'll keep on doing it. How's that? But that's going to do it for us for tonight. Again, on behalf of Andy Roberts, thanks again.
Thanks,
Sure thing.
Scott and myself, have yourself a good evening, everyone.